All right. So to understand what's going on, I need to teach some basic geopolitical theory, okay? So in military affairs, in geopolitics, there's a concept called escalation ladder. Escalation ladder. Okay? And the dominant theory is that whoever has escalation dominance has the most advantage. Okay, so what this means is, let's just say you and I get in a fight, okay? I have a knife, you have a gun. Well, a gun is more dominant than a knife. Therefore, you have a greater advantage over me, and therefore you should win, in theory, okay? And applied to this war in the Middle East, Israel and the United States have escalation dominance because they have nuclear weapons, and Iran doesn't. Therefore, the United States and Israel have a huge advantage over Iran. Okay? But what I will show you today is that this theory is incorrect. It actually doesn't work that way. Right? So let's start off with a very simple example. Let's just say that two people get into a fight, okay? A and B. And how the escalation ladder will work is that maybe A and B run into each other, okay? And then A says, hey man, say sorry. And then B is like, it's not my fault, you say sorry, okay? So there's a conflict, and it's usually a very small conflict. No one knows why, and no one knows who's at fault, okay? So they start cursing each other, okay? So the first step is a conflict. Second step is they start cursing each other, right? Screw you, screw you. And then they might start pushing each other, right? Push, push. And then they hit each other, okay? Punch, punch. And then they start the fight. And then one pulls out a knife and the other pulls out a gun. All right? And then B shoots dead. Hey, fight over, right? Okay. So there are certain things that we need to keep in mind about this example. First of all, the fight is not contained in itself, okay? You cannot perceive this game as just one between A and B, who's physically stronger. There are other players involved as well. Okay, so for example, there are spectators or friends. There's a crowd watching you, okay? This is important because there's also the police, right? Eventually the police will come, the government, and they'll ask people, hey, what happened, man? Whose fault was it, right? And also, for people who are religious, there's also God, right? If you die, you have to go up to God, heaven, and God's gonna ask you, hey man, how did you die? So you have to explain how you died, all right? So in other words, in this escalation ladder, there's three factors that you have to consider that drive people up this escalation ladder. These three factors are, of course, emotions. Second is power. And the third is reason or logic. Okay? And what drives people up is adrenaline. In other words, it is impossible to skip the escalation ladder, right? You don't go from like, hey, screw you, to like the guy pulling out a gun and shooting you, okay? You have to go up step by step by step because adrenaline is rushing in your system. And this adrenaline, it's making you more angry, but it's also making you stronger and more resolved. And it's also telling you how to fight this battle, okay? And the thing to remember about this is really important, is that it's not about how fast you climb up the escalation ladder, okay? If you get too angry and you overreact, then you are at fault, right? What you want to do is climb it up strategically, and that means you have to remain calm and controlled. Because if you remain calm and controlled, you have three advantages over your opponent. The first is focus, second is clarity, and the third is focus, you're clear, and resolve. Okay, sorry, resolve. Okay, what this means is that you know what you're doing, you have a strategy, you're clear about how to achieve your strategy and your goal, and you are determined to achieve it, okay? But in order to have all three, you have to remain calm, and therefore you need to control yourself as you climb up this escalation ladder. Because remember, it's just not about being your opponent, it's about justifying yourself to your friends, to the police, and to God as well. Because you might hit that person, he might go to the hospital, and you've won the fight, but then you go to prison for 10 years, in which case you've lost the fight. Okay? Alright? So, the main idea I want you to remember is this, and this is the law of escalation. Okay, this is a very important idea in my game theory model. Control is more important than dominance. Okay? Control is more important than dominance. Why? Because control is the idea of calibration. Calibration means that you time or you structure or you strategize your response in a way that helps you achieve your strategic objective. Okay? You're not just throwing punches, you're throwing a punch in a certain way that allows you to defend yourself, that strikes fear in the opponent, and also allows you to seem as the good guy among spectators. Okay? And then when the police come, you can justify why you threw that punch in a certain way to the police so that you don't go to jail. Okay? Alright, so another way of saying this is that calibration is ultimately about strategic flexibility. And the idea of strategic flexibility is, in a fight, the person who has the most options, the person who has the most flexible strategy will usually win the fight. Okay? This is a law of escalation, and I'll explain to you how this applies to the US-Iran war. Okay? Alright, so before I actually talk about the war, what I want to do is do a thought experiment to examine how we can understand what's going on between the United States and Iran, okay? So let's do a thought experiment. And the thought experiment is this. Let's just say that there's a bully, okay? And he's the biggest guy in the school. And he has a gang, okay? These are his friends. And there's like maybe 4 of them. And so what they do is they basically prey on everyone at the school, okay? And there's maybe 100 people at the school, right? And so what they do is they make everyone in the cafeteria pay a tax. Okay, if you want to go in the cafeteria and eat, you have to pay a tax. Maybe $1, who knows, okay? And the friends of the bully go collect the tax and then give him all the money, okay? And that is the structure of the school, where if you want to eat lunch in the cafeteria, you have to pay a tax, and the bully's friends collect the money, and the bully shares the money amongst his gang, okay? Now, at first, people are okay with this system because they think that it's actually beneficial because the bully is keeping the peace and order in the cafeteria, right? He's keeping everyone safe. So yeah, I pay $1, but it's not that much money. And we're all safe so that we can all enjoy our lunch in peace in the cafeteria, okay? But then what happens over time is that the bully gets more and more arrogant because he feels invincible. Everyone just obeys him. So he develops the idea of hubris. And the idea of hubris is that no one has the courage to challenge me. Everyone's afraid of me, and therefore I can do whatever I want. So what does he do? Well, the first thing he does is that he charges more money from everyone, okay? So the tax goes up, and so people are disgruntled about this. Okay, they don't understand why they're paying more to the bully, okay? But not only that, but what he will also do is pay less money to his friends so that he can have more money because he wants to buy a car or he wants to go to Paris for the summer, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so everyone's not happy about this, but this is the reality that they live in, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so people just put up with it. One day, a new kid comes into the school, okay? The new kid. And he doesn't really understand the rules of the game. He goes to the cafeteria, and he doesn't know he's supposed to pay a tax. Right? So the bully's friend comes over and says, hey man, where's a dollar? And he's like, what dollar? I just got here. And he refuses to pay. And so what they decide to do is teach him a lesson by ostracizing him, by making him sit alone by himself in the cafeteria. Okay, you have no friends because you don't know the rules and you refuse to play along. And the new kid is like, I don't care. I'm happy not having any friends. Okay? And so then the bully and his friends start to discuss, how can we get this new kid to play along? And so they decide what they're going to do is they're going to curse him. They're going to bully him, okay? So the new kid goes to lunch and he's eating his lunch and the friends come down and start to curse him and says, you're a wimp. Do you want to fight us? And what the new kid does is he just ignores these guys. And these guys are like, what's going on, man? Why is he afraid of us? And slowly what happens is that the other people, the other kids, recognize that, wow, maybe it is possible to rebel against the bully. Maybe it is possible not to pay these stupid taxes. And so they start talking to him secretly, okay? They give him presents, they start to smile at him, they say hi to him, okay? But the new kid just ignores everything, right? And then the friends are like, you know what? We don't actually benefit this much from this relationship anyway. Maybe if we appoint this new kid as the new bully, the new boss, he'll treat us better. And then you have other friends who are like, you know what? This bully, he's fat, he's ugly. Maybe I should be the boss, okay? So just because a new kid comes in, doesn't know the rules, and he's willing to challenge the reality, challenge the assumptions, the values of this cafeteria, now there's dissent. Now there's rebellion going on, okay? And different people are talking to him and trying to form alliances with him. But what he does, and it's really, really interesting, is that he just ignores everyone and keeps focused, okay? And then one day, the bully's friend comes over and says, you know what, you're a wimp. And the new kid finally says, I'm not afraid of you, okay? And then this friend goes back and tells his boss, hey, this new kid said, he's not afraid of you, man. What are you going to do about it? And the bully gets really angry and says, I'm going to go punch his face, okay? So the bully goes in front of the new kid and says, if you don't apologize, I'm going to punch you in the face. And the new kid's like, what did I do wrong? What should I apologize for? And the bully's kind of confused, so he goes away, comes out the next day and says, you apologize now, man! And the kid's like, okay, for what? Tell me to apologize for what? And this goes on for a long time, okay? And then eventually, the bully gets so pissed off that he punches the new kid in the face, okay? So he started it. The new kid, he's hurt, but he decides to punch the bully back in the face, okay? And the bully's stronger, so he beats the bully up. So he beats up the new kid. But what's happened now is that everyone in the school has seen that the bully is not that strong. Everyone's seen that the bully is actually pretty weak. And so they recognize that, hey, if we stand alongside the new kid, we can beat the bully. All right? And eventually what happens is the bully is defeated. Does that make sense to you guys? All right, so certain things to understand is that, yes, the bully has escalation dominance because he's stronger and he's the biggest kid in the school. He can beat up everyone. But what wins the fight is control. What wins the fight is calibration, strategic flexibility. The fact that the new kid has many different options and he's picking the option that is most strategically advantageous to him. Okay? Now, and what you will notice from this example is the bully doesn't have that many options, actually, because he needs to maintain the idea of face or credibility, right? This is the essence of his power. His power lies on the fact that if you do not listen to him, if you do not obey him, he will come and beat the crap out of you. Right? That's credibility. And but the moment that you show that it's actually not that big of a deal to be punched by him, he's not that strong, then he loses all credibility. Okay? Which means that he either retreats or he's forced to strike harder, to kill you, okay, to maintain his credibility. So another way of saying this is that by calibrating your movements strategically, you can manipulate the bully into self-destruction. Does that make sense to you guys? All right? Any questions?